Thank you, sir. I wasn't even going to make any Auburn jokes this morning, but since you opened the door, I figured we might as well get started with one, right? How many Alabama fans we got in here? Come on. How many Auburn fans we got in here? You know, I was at this little small get-together, and I was speaking, and I was about to just make a joke, right? It's what we do in the SEC. It's what we do in the South. Everybody except your guy down here that is from Michigan, and he hadn't chosen a side yet. He says that he's still all Sparty, which is a problem in its own right. But down here, we typically pick one way or another. So I'm about to go into a little joke. And this guy, literally, he stands up on the front row. And he says, "Hey, boy." And this guy's probably, I don't know, 6'5", 220. And he stands up and he says, "Hey, boy, before you tell your joke, I want you to know I'm an Auburn fan." I went, "All right." And he said, "And you see that guy sitting over there?" And this guy stands up, and he's 6'4", and he's about 260. And he said, "He's my brother. And he's an Auburn fan, too." I went, "All right." And he said, "And you see that guy sitting in the back?" And this guy's 6'6", 300, got on overalls, no undershirt, just your typical Auburn fan sitting there, back there in the back. And he said, "He's my daddy. And he's an Auburn fan, too." I said, "All right." He said, "I wanted you to know that before you told your joke." He said, "You still want to tell it?" I said, "Nope." He said, "Why not?" I said, "I don't want to have to explain it 3 times. You get that? Okay. In all seriousness, now we're going to get into it. Y'all are literally my favorite age group to talk to, so I'm excited about the day. I really, really am. But I'm going to ask you some questions before I start diving into mine as we get started. Cool? Who in here is a first-generation college student? Look at all the hands. First-generation college student. Congratulations to you. Seriously. You are choosing to do something different. You're choosing to set your generation that comes behind you apart. So congratulations to you. Who are mamas and daddies in here that have chosen to say, "I'm going to come back and I'm going to go to school because I want something better for my life"? We got some mamas and we got some daddies in here. Good for y'all. Thank you for choosing something greater for your life. How many, let's see if I can get this thing working. How many 18-year-olds we got in here? How many 19-year-olds we got in here? Kudos to you. You chose something greater for your life at a very young age that not everybody is willing to choose. You chose to say, "I'm going to go and I'm going to go pursue something greater for my life." So now I'm going to ask the final question before we get started. Who in here wants to live a life of impact? If you don't raise your hand, who wants to live something that says, "Man, I lived a life of significance"? I lived something that said, "Man, I want to be a part of having an impact greater than the way that I left it." Hopefully everybody in here feels this way, and you are not just tired right now and are a little sleepy, maybe don't fully understand the question. But all of us want to live a life of impact. All of us want to leave this place better than what it is that we found it. So my question, and really what we're going to dive into, is to be able to live a life of impact means that you have to have a goal worthy of chasing. The goal has to be worthy to fulfill that life. And you know, my journey started when I was 11 years old. I walked into my parents' bedroom at 11 years old and I told them, I said, "I'm going to play in the NFL." And they looked back at me and versus telling me, "Why don't you worry about making your first JV squad?" Because at that point in time, I'd never played one down of organized football. But man, I was awesome in the backyard. I was really, really good. And they told me, they said, man, shoot for the moon. Worst case scenario, we'll end up in the stars. And that day, I'm ashamed to say, in many ways, football became my God. But I chased it. It's all I wanted. It's all I thought about. I was driven to get there. And I did. 11 surgeries, 3 broken vertebrae, a punctured lung, a ruptured spleen, dislocated jaw, and a partridge in a pear tree later, I made it there. Look at me. I should have been a kicker. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't look like a typical football player. I tell people I was just always dumb enough to keep getting up. Like, that was always my claim to fame. But I did. I made it there. And I remember sitting in my first ever meeting in the NFL. And man, I'm that dork sitting on the front row, and I got my notebook out, and I'm ready to take notes because this is something I've been chasing, this goal I've been chasing since I was 11 years old. And I was finally sitting there. And so the GM walks in, the general manager, the guy that is over the entire billion-dollar business. He walks in, and he's got slick back hair. He's got on a 3-piece suit. He's got a spray tan. Like, he's pretty. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's really pretty. And he walks in, and he stands behind the podium, and he doesn't say congratulations. He doesn't say we're glad you're here. He doesn't say any of those things. He walks in, and he says, you look at yourself as a one-man business. He said, and as soon as you start worrying about me and my decisions, the head coach, his decisions, the guy sitting to your right, the guy sitting to your left, he said, I'll go find somebody that's worried about their job. Do we understand one another? And I'm sitting there with my notebook, and I'm writing, and I go, huh. First note, as an NFL football player, forget everything you ever learned about football. Because in that moment, I'd always been taught. What do we teach? Coaches, we play to something greater than ourselves. We play for our teammate. We play for our family. We play for something. And he's telling me, man, worry about you. I mean, in reality, he is saying this is no longer a game. You get paid to do this. I expect you to bookend your day with darkness. I expect you to be here and be here all day and give it everything that you have, and I expect you to be the last one to leave because that's the demand and the expectation of the job. And if you're not willing to do that, I'll go find somebody that is. But man, he totally laid out, here's the expectation and the rules that go with this game, and he walks out. And I had a coach named Herm Edwards. Anybody ever heard of Herm Edwards? If you hadn't, he's one of the greatest human beings on the face of the earth. You should check him out. But he's walking in, he's got like this little limp. And he's walking, and the door shuts behind spray tan. He said, forget everything he just said. I was like, good gracious, second note. I'm going to need a shrink after this meeting, right? Because now I got one guy telling me one thing, one guy telling me the next. He says, man, forget everything he just said. He says, man, we think you are awesome. He said, we think you're the best in the world at what it is that you do. He said, you wouldn't be sitting in this room. He said, that's why we drafted you. He said, you have greatness inside of you. He said, but that doesn't matter to me. He said, I don't care how much money you make. He said, I don't care how many Pro Bowls you've been to. He said, I don't care what rounds you were drafted in. He said, none of that matters to me. He said, I'm worried about you as a man. He said, I'm worried about you as a husband, as a father, as a son, as a friend, as a teammate, as a citizen, as a person. He said, I'm worried about you as a man and who it is you're going to become. He said, the measure of a man's success is not in how much wealth he acquires, but how he affects those around him in a positive way. And I remember sitting there, a lot like you're sitting here right now, and I've got all these goals and these dreams and these aspirations from my life. Good gracious, I've been chasing it since I was 11 years old. I made it a functional Savior in my life. And in my first meeting, this man tells me, ultimately, your goal is not worthy enough. What you're chasing will never bring you satisfaction. What you're trying to become is not going to fulfill you in the great plan that it is that is over your life. You were fearfully and wonderfully made. And what you're chasing, it is not a life of impact. And so, as you sit there this morning, hopefully you're starting to begin to envision This life, good gracious, you're 18, 19 years old and you chose to come to college. Chances are you have a vision for your life. You mamas and you daddies that chose to come back, you have a vision for your life. You first year, first generation, first time college students, you are choosing something that has never been done in your family's lineage. Hopefully you're starting to develop and envision this different path. So this morning, here's what I want us to do. If you will give me 25 minutes and you'll take these 4 principles and you will apply them to your life, don't have to wait until you're sitting in front of a guy after you've been chasing your dream for so long and he tells you, you know what, that's not a life of impact, that's not a goal worthy of chasing. If we can take these and begin to implement them in your life, I promise you, you will go and you will live a life of impact. Deal? We ready? Are we sure? Come on. Are we ready? All right, where's my baseball players? Come on, I saw y'all walking in. There you are. How wide is home plate? We had one brave soul. Congratulations to you, and you said it with confidence. That's one thing, that's a life lesson. If you do anything with confidence, chances are somebody's going to believe it. So whatever you do, just do it fast and do it with confidence, and somebody's going to say yes. But you are correct, 17 inches. So goal, life lesson, how to achieve a life of excellence and a life of impact and have a goal worthy of chasing is live life at 17 inches. And I share that story because I heard a story years and years ago about this old man that was he was a baseball coach. And he went and he was speaking at a conference like this, and the whole room but everybody's excited about this guy that's coming to be the coach. And he's going to come and he's going to teach them about hitting runs and bunts and when to do like just the strategy of baseball. And everybody's really talking about is from Little League all the way up through college. And so he's getting there, and it's finally his time to do the keynote, and he's walking in. He's kind of hunchback, and he's older, but he's got this home plate swinging from his neck. And he comes in, he stands behind the podium, and he gets all his notes out, and he starts getting ready to go. And he literally talks for 20 minutes about the fundamentals of baseball and what it takes to build a winning team and all the different things. All the while, everybody's sitting there and they're going, why does this dude look like Flavor Flav and have a home plate wrapped around his neck? Like, what's going on here? And so he sits there for 20 minutes and he goes through this over and over and over again. Until finally he goes, I bet y'all are wondering why I got a home plate wrapped around my neck. And he said, in the room, he's like, how many Little League coaches we got? And a few of them raised their hand, and he said, how wide's home plate? And finally, one brave soul spoke up, and in more question than probably answer, he's like, 17 inches? He's like, that's right. He said, how many Little League coaches? I mean, how many high school coaches we got in here? Hands went up. How wide's home plate? He said, 17 inches. College coaches, he said, how wide is home plate? They said 17 inches. He said, if I asked a professional pitcher and they were sitting in this room right now and I said, how wide is home plate? He would look at me and he would say, home plate is 17 inches. And I'd look back at him and I'd say, well, what happens if you're having an off day, you know? Like you can only get it maybe 18, 19, maybe even 20 inches. What happens? Do we widen the plate? Do we start calling strikes that are further out just because you can't throw it over the plate, just because you can't live up to the standard of 17 inches? He said, and that pitcher would look back at me and say, nope, I'd get sent back down to the minor leagues. And he says 17 inches is 17 inches is 17 inches. He said, it doesn't matter if you're having an off day, the standard is still the standard. We don't water down and expand just because you're not reaching it that day or you're having a bad day or you don't feel like it. And then all of a sudden he took home plate and he turned it upside down. He drew a door and 2 windows on it. He said, if you want to know what's wrong with our society, he said, it starts in the home. He said, because we have too many people that are way more interested in being their kids' parents than they are being being their kids' friends than they are being their kids' parents. He said, we've widened the plate, we've changed the standard, yet we're the ones that want to complain about the next generation. And then he drew a flag on it, and he said, if you want to know what's wrong with our country, he said, we've widened the plate. The standard and the values that we used to stand on, he said, we no longer stand on anymore because we try to make it to where everybody feels good about it. He said, the thing with being 17 inches and living life at 17 inches, he says, is the standard never changes. You just have to choose each and every day to go decide you want to live to something greater than yourself. But you know, the thing about standards, when we think of standard, we think of discipline, we think of work ethic, we think of perseverance, we think of determination, we think of all these words that probably look a lot like a high school weight room. You just have all these words written on the walls, right? But we think of these words, and maybe I have a different perspective on them, but I don't think you have discipline for the sake of having discipline. I don't think you have a work ethic just for the sake of having a work ethic. None of those things are natural postures. Like, you're not a naturally persevering person. Like, our natural posture is when bad things happen, what do we want to do? Quit. That is the natural posture of a human being, is when bad things happen, we go, the easiest thing to do is to quit. The easiest thing to do is to widen the plate and make ourselves feel better, justify whatever it might be. But we persevere, we work hard, we have disciplines in our life, we're determined to see a brighter future, not because the practice of these habits, but we do it because we have a goal that is worthy of chasing. See, when we have a vision for our life, now all of a sudden the discipline makes sense. When we have a path that it is we're trying to reach, now all of a sudden work ethic, I'm willing to stay there and work harder and work longer because I want to fulfill whatever it is over my life. The world is full of people that love in-game success. But it is short on people that are willing to pay the price to see it come to pass. Play life at 17 inches. All right? Number 2, get comfortable in the uncomfortable. Get comfortable in the uncomfortable. You know, at every training camp, first day, didn't matter if it was in junior high, didn't matter if it was in high school, didn't matter if it was in college or you're playing with a bunch of millionaires. You sit there and you go into it, and you go through and the coaches tell you all their different things. And the very next deal is you break up into offense, defense, and the very first thing that you do is you learn the cadence. So quarterback gets in there, and now all of a sudden I got the running back, the fullback, the Y, the X, the Z, center, right guard, right tackle, left tackle, and now there's a little spot for me to come in. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to go hop fit to trips right tight zip, scat right chip, 525 F post, H swing, alert 40 belly, kill 50 gut on one. Ready? Everybody got that? Let's try it one more time. Actually, let's do an exercise. Let's see if we all can do this very simple exercise. I'll make the play shorter. Let's go deuce right, 40 belly, on one. Ready? Wow. Okay, let's walk through this. I'm going to go deuce right, 40 belly, on one, and I'm going to say ready, and we're all going to go break together. So I'm going to go deuce right, 40 belly, on one. Ready? Here we go. Deuce right, 40 belly, on one. Ready? That was way better. Who is this right here? The volleyball team? Y'all got rhythm. All right. So we're going to run deuce right, 40 belly. So I'm going to go up to the line of scrimmage, and I'm going to go blue 20, set hut. That was worse than the first time. Let's try this again. Just a walk through first, we're going to go deuce right, 40 belly, on one. We're going to say break, and then I'm going to say blue 20, set hut, and we're going to go right. Everybody got it? So deuce right, 40 belly, on one. Ready? Got it. Blue 20, set hut. Look at us. We just did it. We just got a cadence. Felt a little bit like accident, so let's try it one more time. Deuce right, 40 belly, on one. Ready? Blue 20, set hut. Nice. We're awesome. Totally awesome. We just developed immediately a cadence of consistency. That quick, thanks to the volleyball team. That quickly, we just developed a cadence of consistency. So what that means is we know what the snap count is, correct? Somebody that would walk in from the back would sound exactly like y'all sounded at the very beginning. They don't even know to clap. They don't know why they're clapping or when they're supposed to clap. We now know the play, deuce right, 40 belly, so we're running to the right. We know the snap count. It's on 1, so we know where we're going and we know when we're going there. We have the competitive advantage immediately due to a cadence of consistency. It's a valuable thing. But here's the caveat to that, is we can't move. On offense, you can't move before the snap. So just because we know where we're going and when we're going there, we have a cadence of consistency, but there's going to come a point where the other side knows what it is that we're doing, correct? They're going to know the snap count. They're going to have seen the formation and the play before, so now they're going to say, all right, it's going to be on 1. And now all of a sudden that safety can start getting a head start, and man, he can go blue 20, and by the time I say set hut, our guys are standing still. He's coming over the line of scrimmage. It ends up bad. You end up on the ESPN. It's just a bad deal. What happened was our cadence of consistency turned into a cadence of comfort, which ended in a cadence of complacency. You see, the thing that most people do that have high hopes and great goals is they start off in this cadence, and it's consistent. It's doing the same thing over and over and over again because you know what? Today matters. Today matters. But they keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, and in the process, we lose the advantage. Because what used to be in our advantage, now all of a sudden, because we did it so many times, it became a disadvantage. And that's what happens with people in their goals, is they pursue something, but then they get comfortable in their pursuit, and then they get complacent in their pursuit, and now all of a sudden a life of impact and a goal worthy of chasing is no longer attainable because you're not willing to pay the price to go see what it takes. So we have to get in this posture that we're going to get comfortable in the uncomfortable, because the very next thing after we go deuce right, 40 belly on 1, we're going to come right back and we're going to go deuce left, 50 belly on 2. Ready? Try one more time. Deuce left, 50 belly on 2. Ready? Try one more time. Volleyball team involved. Deuce left, 50 belly on 2. Ready? We got it. We're going on 2. Blue 20. Blue 20 said, hut! I just told you we're going on 2. Deuce left, 50 belly on 2. Ready? All right, here we go. Blue 20. Blue 20 said, hut, hut. I'm going to say, blue 20 said, hut, don't clap, hut. Then you clap. That's on 2. Maybe I wasn't clear in my communication. Y'all ready for it? Let's do it. On 2. Blue 20 said, hut, hut. There we go. I think we can do it even better this time. Blue 20 said, hut, hut. Now we have a new cadence. We were willing to get uncomfortable, which in the immediate felt like failure, correct? Some people in here feel like a failure because you were clapping on 1, because if you don't, I will call you out and I will prove that you were. But because we were willing to say, you know what, just because we got it right this way doesn't mean that we stopped climbing. We just got the advantage back, because now all of a sudden, do we have a cadence of consistency? Yes. Our consistency now is that we are willing to get comfortable in the idea of discomfort. To be able to live in that place means that you have to be willing to put yourself out there for the whole world to judge. It means that you have to put yourself out there to risk failure. temporarily. See, because every person that lives a life of impact will always put their, and you know what? Most of them are unapologetic about what it is, and they dream enormously big. And when you do that, people are always going to look at you and say, either A, they don't want you to get there, or two, they don't believe that you will. But it's going to take consistently changing this cadence to where you can go live and fulfill this goal worthy of chasing. Get comfortable in the uncomfortable. Number 3, learn the power of saying no. Learn the power of saying no, because every time you say yes to something, you say no to everything else. I'll repeat that. Learn the power of saying no, because every time you say yes to something, you say no to everything else. I can remember as a teenage boy, in my house, we said yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, please and thank you, because my parents deemed that it was a sign of respect. And in the moment, I felt like it was just a set of rules that I had to follow. What I've now learned about life is that what they were teaching me was honor. And there's a difference between respect and honor. See, respect is the rule that you have to do something, but it's a prerequisite to honor. Honor means that you begin to think of something greater than yourself. So my parents, in their very first part of this in my life, were teaching me that by respecting them, there was going to be a point that I wanted to honor them. And I no longer had to say yes sir, no sir. I wanted to say yes sir, no sir, because they were due my respect. And then because they were due my respect. And then what I later learned is that, one day I was going to have a wife that is my greatest earthly treasure, but I don't love being married to her every day, but I have to choose to honor her. I got 2 little boys that I have been chosen to raise into future men. And you know what? Every day is not the most fun thing, but I've through respect, learned the idea of honor and living for something greater than myself. I have 170 plus kids that count on me to make sure that I'm honoring them by the way that I live as well. So I thank them for this. But in this posture of respect, I was also a smart aleck. And I was going through a phase where everything was dude, right? And so I was a teenager, and my dad asked me something, and I said, yeah, dude. And I was sitting down when I said it, and immediately I was standing up, and I was 6 foot further back than I was previous, and I was 3 inches taller as well, and my shirt was super, super tight. And I didn't really know what was happening other than my dad had ripped me up out of the chair, and I was now further back. And he said something that's changed my life. It literally changed my life, and it showed me the power of no. Because he looked at me, and through every ounce of love and not anger in his voice, he said, son, he said, as long as I breathe, he said, I will never be your dude. He said, but I always will be your dad. And man, it changed my life. It didn't in the moment. But what he did was he said, no, we're not even going to begin to go down a path that will become a slippery slope. He said, no, we're going to stop it right now. And by the power of him saying no, he said yes to everything else in my life. Because he had the courage to tell me no. You are going to be presented with numerous opportunities to go and chase and do and whatever it might be that is going to distract you from the goal that is worthy of chasing, that will lead to a life of impact. Man, y'all live in a world that you literally can find the world's news. It's at your fingertips. You live in a world that very easily you could be envious of someone else's goal, someone else's life. Did you know that 12% of your day today, you will be comparing yourself to someone else? You have to learn the power of saying, no, I don't covet. No, I don't want. No, I don't, because I have a defined vision for my life. And I'm not going to spend any time with anything or anyone that is going to detract me from what it is that I'm trying to go see. Learn the power of saying no. And lastly, it's never about you. It's never about you. When you choose to live a life of impact and you choose to chase a goal that is worthy of giving your life to, you have to realize it's never about you. As long as I can remember, I had influence. I led in some way. I wasn't allowed to play football, but man, I was an awesome soccer player. I was a good baseball player. And you know, there was a time where my coach was like, Brodie, you have to do better. You have to be the leader. And I went, why? Like, I was little at the time. And I remember his words now very distinctly. And he said, because you're the best. I went, oh. So that's the prerequisite to winning. That's the prerequisite to leading, is just being the best. And I'm ashamed to say that for most of my childhood and even up through high school, I led that way. I led that, you know what, if you are the best, it means that you're going to get the title, and by having title, it means that you're going to have a mantle of leadership. And so I did this with literally every day, the expectation, my goal was to be the absolute best at whatever it was that I did. And for the most part, I was. But let me tell you this. In the journey of being the best, I was a terrible teammate. See, because it was all about me. It was all about if I won. And the problem is when you choose to live a life of impact and you choose to chase a goal that's worthy, chances are, if you're willing to chase it, it means that you have leadership capabilities. Not everybody's willing to do it. That's why not everybody raised their hand. Not everybody is willing to say, I want to be a world changer. It takes something that not everybody has. But the problem is when we make it about winning and we make it about expectation, we make it about being the best, the problem is that we are leading still. But the problem with leading is you're either leading in a good direction or you're leading in a bad direction. You still have influence. You're still going to take people with you. And you know what I did? I took people with me and I made a bunch of people that all deemed that they were supposed to be the best. And in the process, we ended up always having teams that had a bunch of silos. Everybody was just worried about filling their bin with the things that were going to help them personally. I had two moments. I've already shared with you one, Herm Edwards, saying, man, you need to change your goal. I had another one in college where I thought that I was doing well and thought that I was doing something, and you know what, in reality, I was still winning the day. I was still trying to be the best version of me, and I had a coach look back at me and he said, son, you're expected to play to a standard each and every day. Whatever you thought was the best you had, he said, you play to it. And he looked back at me and he said, if you think I'm talking just about football, he said, you're wrong. I had influence from the time I was little. I got it reshaped when I was in college. I had a guy tell me that I had the wrong goal, but I still didn't know how in the world it was that I was supposed to fulfill it. And you want to know where I learned? I learned from being at the bottom. I never knew how to lead, and I never knew how to influence until I went to the NFL, and I was blessed enough I got to play there for 5 years. Play is a big word. I got to be the backup for the most part for 5 years. And you know what? Those 5 years taught me more about life and leadership than I'll ever be able to learn from all the other ones that I was the man. You see, because I had to learn to give myself to something greater than myself. You know what? As the backup quarterback, you're expected to be in there before the starting quarterback. That way, when he gets there, you already have the film ready. You already have the coffee ready. You have already everything, because your job is to serve him. And then you have to not only serve him, but now you have to go do your own study, because now you're the scout team quarterback. And my sole job, what I could bring value to the team, was by serving the defense in practice. Nobody around. I got nothing for it. My reward was seeing the defense play well, because I was a good scout team quarterback. That was my reward. But what I learned throughout that time was, you know what? That was the greatest leadership that I could ever have in that moment. And it taught me more about life than I ever could have learned. But what it did was it gained true influence, because those same guys that I never got any accolades for were the same ones that would vote me for different awards, because I was willing to put a lot into it, even though I was never going to get a lot out of it. I had to learn that, you know what? Living a life of impact is never about you. That's a hard thing for our world to take in. Living a life of impact is never about you. But you know what? I learned this from a very young age. And it's probably why I sit here and I stand before you right now. You see, when I was 5 years old, I was standing at the front of the administration building at the Boys Ranch. If you don't know what we do, we got a Boys Ranch in Gadsden, a Girls Ranch in Springville, a school in Rainbow City, a college ministry in Birmingham, and we've helped plan or grow 83 children's homes throughout the country in 27 different states that's currently serving 3,700 children that just needed a chance. Kids that come from the worst imaginable place you can imagine. And we get to show them a different way of life. We get to offer them a different chance. If you want to check it out, it's called bigoak.org. It'll tell you everything that you don't know. But I literally went from the hospital to the ranch because my parents founded the ranch in 1974 in a farmhouse with 5 boys. And as I'm standing there as a 5-year-old little boy, I got my arm wrapped around my dad's leg, and this old beat-up truck pulls up. And this guy gets out, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he throws it down, and he stomps it out. And he walks up, and he looks at my dad. My dad's about this tall. And I got my arm wrapped around his leg, and he looks up at me, and he goes, "You're the man in charge." My dad says, "I reckon." He said, "I got a new girlfriend. She told me I got to pick. It's either her or my boys." He said, "So if it's all right with you," he said, "I'm going to leave my 3 boys with you." So 11-year-old Travis gets out. He says, "No more fighting, no more getting beat up, no more going hungry." He says, "This sounds pretty good to me." He said, "I'm in." And he went inside and he started playing basketball with the other boys. 10-year-old Michael gets out and says, "I told y'all he was going to leave us." And he took off running, and took off social workers hours to catch him, bring him back, let him know everything was going to be okay. And then one of the plays of my life got out. 6-year-old little boy named Joey. He gets out and he realizes what's going on. And he jumps up and he puts his arms around his daddy's neck and he says, "Oh," he said, "you can't leave me the same way Mama did." And I watched my dad reach around, he peeled the little boy's hands off, and he pulled him into his chest, and their dad got in the truck and drove off, and they never saw him again until after they graduated high school. Little did I know that little boy was going to become my brother. We were going to play baseball together. We were going to rodeo together. He was going to be in my wedding. And 8 years ago, he called me, he said, "Man, what are you doing?" I said, "Man, I'm sitting at the office. What are you doing?" He said, "I'm getting married." I was like, "Awesome." I said, "Tell me about her." So he started telling me about this girl he was going to marry and all the different things. And at the end of that conversation, he said this. And if you remember anything of this talk, remember this. He said, 27 years ago, he said, my dad pulled into a stranger's driveway. He said it was the lowest point of my life. He says, I got out and I met this big, tall man that made me 4 promises that we still make to every child that calls Big Oak Ranch home today. We love you. We don't want anything in return. Just give us an opportunity to earn your love back. We'll never lie to you. We'd love you enough to give you truth even if you don't like it. We'll stick with you until you're grown. Whatever it is you want to do in life, we want to help you get there. And number 4, there are boundaries. But at some point in time, those rules are going to give way to relationship. What you feel like you currently have to do is going to become what you want to do because you can't imagine doing it any other way. He said, but then I walked inside. He said, and I met my real mom. And he said, Mom Duke's going to sit at the front row of my wedding because she was my mom and she didn't have to be. He said, and I met my real dad. And he said, and Pop Duke's going to stand next to me as my best man because he stood in the gap when he didn't have to. He said, but how cool is it at my lowest point that God was already preparing me for the life that I now get to live? I said, what do you mean, man? He said, the girl I'm marrying has a 7-year-old daughter that doesn't have a daddy. He said, how cool is it at my lowest point? I was already being prepared for the life that I now get to live. He said, I just thought it was cool how God's got this sovereign plan. He said, I know you're busy. He said, I got to run. This little boy's life was changed because two people decided to go live for something greater than themselves, and in the process said, you know what, I'm going to give you everything I've got today. I can't promise you tomorrow, but I can give you everything I've got today, because you know what, today matters. And by choosing to invest day after day after day after day in a world that is not an instant gratification world, we don't always get to see the fruit of what we pour ourselves into every day. And to live a life of impact in the world that we live in, that's okay. We might be 2 generations away from seeing it, but you still do it every day because the goal is worthy of it. To see the hurt receive healing is worth it. And you know what? That young man and his wife and his daughter 3 years ago decided to come back and be house parents. And they're now serving the next generation of him because he said, you know what? That meant a lot in my life. It changed my life. Someone willing to say, it's never about me. If you want to go live a life of impact, play life at 17 inches. If you want to go live a life of significance, get comfortable in the uncomfortable. If you want to be able to achieve all that it is that your goal and the vision over your life demands, learn the power of saying no. But in all of those things, keep the posture that to live a life and a goal worthy of living, it is never about me. But today matters. It's a great thing to see it for yourself. But develop the habits in your life that are going to allow you to go fulfill it. See, because you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your habits. So I will leave you with this. A small thing repeated is not a small thing. Because when a small thing is repeated and it's compounded, it leads towards a life that can change the world. This young man is living proof. Choose a goal that is worthy of chasing, and with everything you have inside of you, live in the day, measure by the decade, and never lose sight of who it is that you were created to be and who it is that you demand of yourself to become. Thank y'all for your time. Go change the world. God bless.